Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Delorean Tech, and today we're going to follow up on our KW suspension video series for the DeLorean. We're going to be installing the Delorean Industries adjustable rear suspension links in the car. Now these can be used with any of the available suspension options out there for the DeLorean in order to fine-tune and adjust the rear camber in the car, which is actually not possible with the stock suspension. So with adjustable rear links, you have typically two options: adjustable top links and adjustable lower links. Whichever one you choose is really just a matter of preference. We went with adjustable top links mainly for appearance. Adjustable lower suspension links are a little easier to access whenever you are trying to adjust the suspension on the car. So whichever option you go with, either the adjustable lower links or the adjustable top links, they're both used to adjust camber in the car, which if you remember in our part 4 of our KW suspension video series, after we did the alignment, we came back and found that we had well over 2 degrees of negative camber in the rear of the car. I think it was 2.2 and 2.7 degrees of negative camber, which we definitely need to fix. So we went ahead and got the adjustable top links from Delorean Industries. And so today we're going to show you how to install these in the rear suspension of your DeLorean. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so here's what we're going to be installing. These are the DPI adjustable suspension top links. So these are adjustable in that you can manipulate the length of these. So here they are kind of at their shortest position, but you can adjust the length by simply threading each end outward. And once you get it to the proper length or your desired length, then you just tighten these jam nuts here against each end. And there you go. I've also went ahead and picked up a set of new suspension bolts here from DeLorean Go, just in case we encounter any corrosion issues. You're also going to want to use brand new nylock nuts. Do not reuse the existing nylock nuts. So the first thing obviously is that you want to lift the car up, get it on some jack stands, and remove the wheels. So once you get the wheels and tires off, I recommend applying some knocker loose to the suspension hardware. So you want to apply some to this nylock nut right here, and to the end of the pivot bolt right here, and also on the other end I'm going to apply some here to this suspension bolt, and then you also want to apply some inside here as well. This is where it bolts into the frame. I'm going to put some there as well. So you're also going to want to position a jack underneath the suspension and support it. So you're going to want to start loosening up the hardware. So you're going to want to start with this one back here. This is a suspension bolt. This one goes directly into the frame. This one here is the pivot bolt. You're going to want to hold one end and using a breaker bar, break off this nylock right here. So with the knocker loose, it just makes it a lot easier to loosen all of the hardware here. So once you get those going, it's just a matter of taking off the original top link. So with just the breaker bar right here, hold on to the head of this bolt right here using another 19mm. We'll go ahead and break that. Pretty easy. So in order to remove the pivot bolt right here, you can use another suspension bolt and pound out that bolt. Then what you can do is push in on this side and then loosen the pivot bolt this way. So you could use something smaller like this extension or a screwdriver to push in on the bolt from the other side and then loosen it from this side. You can also just take a screwdriver, put it in there, and then just tap out the bolt. There we go. So here's the bolt. We'll go ahead and set that aside, and then we'll free this end right here. One thing I like to do is always have a copy of the parts diagram available so I can take a look at the proper hardware and the proper hardware orientation. So this rear bolt right here should be easy enough to remove by hand. Just turn it and also pull at the same time. Another thing you can do to make it easier to take these bolts out is to just raise the suspension a little bit. That'll take some load off of that arm right here and just make things a lot easier to take out. So we'll remove that bolt. I think we're going to replace that because there's definitely some corrosion going on there. The pivot bolt didn't look too bad, so we might just retain that. This pivot bolt here is a very expensive part. I think it's about $30 or something. So we'll probably reuse that. We'll clean them up. We're definitely going to replace this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the original arm now. There we go. And this is a good opportunity to clean up around here as well. As you can see, it's quite dirty down inside here, inside the frame. So we'll go ahead and remove the original arm here. As you can see, there's some corrosion going on as well. I also highly recommend inspecting that frame connection right there. You want to inspect those threads in there. Make sure they're not corroded. It's a good idea to take some cleaner, rust cleaner, or rust remover, and go ahead and clean out the inside right there. So the good thing about the knocker loose here is that it also works as a great rust dissolver. So you can just spray some inside there. So now that you have your stock top link out, you're going to want to take your new adjustable top links. What I would recommend doing is try to make these the same length as the stock ones when you put them in. That way it just makes it a little bit easier, and then after you've torqued everything down, the factory specifications, then you can make your adjustments. The assumption here is that you're going to be lengthening these because you've lowered the car and you've got negative camber in the rear, so you're going to lengthen the top links, versus if you were to install adjustable lower links, you would actually be shortening those to bring the camber in. So I would recommend trying to get these as close to stock as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. Definitely not shorter, but definitely about the same or a little bit longer than the stock arm. So just in case you were interested, these jam nuts right here, these are 28 millimeters. So you're going to want to use a 28 millimeter combination wrench to make the adjustment there. So if you're going to be replacing the frame bolt, which I really recommend, this is number 15 right here. The part number is 101259. So here's my new frame bolt, and here's the original one. I did notice there was a slight difference. There's not as many threads on the new one as there are on the old one, but it actually doesn't matter because when you insert the new one into the top link, you can see that you've got all your threads showing, so it really doesn't make a difference. So let's go ahead and install the new adjustable top link. Hopefully it fits. Yeah, it looks like it fits in pretty good there. Let's go ahead and this is the new bolt, the new suspension bolt. We'll go ahead and get that in there. You gotta make sure that you've got this aligned so that you've got an easy way of getting in there. You don't want to force those threads. Remember not to force the threads in. If it feels like it's not going in easily, then you definitely want to back it off. This one's going in pretty easily here. It's very easy to get that aligned. So you just gotta keep ratcheting those threads in. It looks like it's pretty easy. I can do it almost by hand. So yeah, we're good there. So I wouldn't tighten that all the way just yet. Just get it started and then start working on the far end here. So we can go ahead and put the pivot bolt in next. So you can use a mallet here to tap it in a little bit. Now we'll take the pivot bolt. Here's the pivot bolt. We'll go ahead and put this in. Now you might need to adjust the length of this a little bit. You can also use a screwdriver here to help manipulate the opening if you don't feel like you're aligned properly. So now that we have the top link aligned here, I'm going to go ahead and just tap in the pivot bolt very gently. You don't want to damage those threads. You might need to push this e-brake bracket down a little bit in order to clear the bolt because it may not go in all the way. You see it's kind of stopped right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push down and then tap it in and good to go. Now that we have it all situated, we can go ahead and start threading in the rear bolt, frame bolt right here. So So we've got the bolt fully inserted, but we're not going to tighten it down just yet because we have to torque that to factory specification along with the pivot bolt. So for the pivot bolt, I'm going to install a new washer and a nylock nut. The new washer is optional. I just figured it would be a good opportunity. So here's the one I got from Delorean Go. So we definitely want to replace the nylock nuts. You don't want to reuse the old ones. So just get that on by hand first. Tighten it a little bit. So you'll need to hold one side. I'm using this 19mm combination wrench to hold it on this side. Tighten this down a little bit, don't over tighten it. We're going to need to torque this down to factory specification at the end of the installation. So when we do that, this one's going to be harder to do. We're probably going to have to remove the air deflector shield in order to torque this to factory specification. This one shouldn't be too hard to do. So the adjustment mechanism is actually pretty easy. So you've got these two jam nuts here, and you've got this sort of center nut that's integral with the rods, the threaded rods on each end. So the first thing you want to do when you adjust this is loosen those jam nuts. So loosening the jam nuts, you just turn them both counterclockwise because they're one side is reverse thread, so both of them go counterclockwise, which makes it pretty easy. Then what you're going to want to do is turn that center nut, that integral nut. So one of the reasons why you have these different colored nuts here is so you maintain the same orientation on both sides of the car, because depending on which way this is oriented, you're either going to turn counterclockwise to lengthen or clockwise to lengthen, okay? So in this case we have this sort of brass colored nut on the outside. We're actually going to be turning it counterclockwise to lengthen it, and then clockwise to shorten it. And you can see it kind of going in. So if you had these switched, it would be the opposite. So we're pushing this out. Now that we've completed the installation here, we're going to go ahead and repeat the process on the other side of the car. So for the passenger side of the car, there really is no difference compared to the driver's side. So you're just taking both suspension bolts out just like you did on the other side. So your pivot bolt comes out, the frame bolt comes out. Again, knock or loose makes a big difference. Okay, frame bolts, replacing those is probably not a bad idea. As you can see, there's a lot of corrosion going on there, so replacing these I think is definitely a must. This one's in better shape, I think, than the other one was as far as corrosion goes, but it's always a good idea to replace the hardware when you can. So just take out the old one, clean up the area, install the new one, and you're good to go. So just a note, when you're installing on the other side of the car, I would make sure you have the jam nuts in the same orientation by color. Again, you have this kind of brass colored one and the silver colored one. Just make things a lot easier when it comes time to adjust these. So if you have any issues with the pivot bolt and lining it up along here through the top link, you can actually adjust the length of the top link while you're doing that in order to ensure that this is going to go through and you got everything aligned. Sometimes it can be kind of difficult, but if you use that to your advantage, it'll make things a lot easier. So again, we're going to be using a new nylock here. Definitely not going to be reusing the old one on the pivot bolt. So the final thing you should do is, before you take it to the alignment shop, I would recommend making sure that on each side, that this spacing here is identical on the driver's side as it is on the passenger side. So I had a 2-inch gap here. So I'm going to make sure that I've got that same 2-inch gap on the driver's side as I do on the passenger side. And how you do that is these jam nuts, you just turn them, the way I have it set up is turn them to the left. That loosens up the jam nuts. So you loosen those up first. So turn them both to the left. Then you just take your 25, or you can use a 26. I found a 26 actually works pretty good too. And if you turn this to the right, you are actually shortening the top link. The length of the top link is shortening. If you turn it counterclockwise, you're actually lengthening the top link. So you just want to make sure you have the same gap here, and I've got a 2-inch gap on both sides, so I'm good to go. Before you finish here though, you want to make sure those jam nuts are locked in place. You just take your 28, tighten them up, but you don't have to tighten them too much. They don't get torqued down, they just get tightened up. That will prevent any movement. There you go. Okay, the final step of the installation is to put the wheels and tires back on and then torque all hardware down to factory specification. Okay, so I just dropped the car back down and I'm already noticing a tremendous improvement in the camber here in the rear of the car. So there's definitely no more negative camber, at least on the driver's side. On the passenger side, I think I'm gonna have to make an adjustment. Now you can see, like right there, that camber is perfect. In fact, if I take a level, it's pretty level. I think it actually looks pretty good too. Definitely the look I'm going for, with the wheels flush and not cambered inward like they were before. But right now I'm going to go ahead and torque everything down to factory specification. It's important that the vehicle is supported on its wheels and tires and not on jack stands or anything else. Try to get as much as you can torqued with the wheels on the ground. If you have any issues accessing any of the hardware, I recommend putting the car up on some ramps and doing it that way. So according to the workshop manual on the rear suspension, the upper links, the inner bolt gets tightened to 60 foot-pounds and the outer bolt, the pivot bolt, gets tightened to 42 foot-pounds. So I got the other side adjusted and there's definitely no negative camber here. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out for a road test, see what we've got, and then let the car settle, let the suspension settle, then start making the adjustments before I take it to the alignment shop for proper wheel alignment. Everybody, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just go ahead and drop those down on the comments. And once again, thanks for watching.